The first whispers often came with the dawn, sifting through the ancient oak trees that guarded Oakhaven like stoic sentinels. They spoke of dew-kissed cobblestones, of the distant murmur of the Willow Creek, and of the promise of another quiet day in a town that time seemed to have forgotten, but in the most charming way imaginable. For Clara Finch, head librarian of the Oakhaven Public Library, these were the most sacred hours. Her small cottage, a charmingly crooked affair with a window box perpetually overflowing with petunias, was just a 10-minute walk from the library. Each morning before the bakery across the square filled with the scent of fresh bread, before the first sleepy residents stirred their coffee, Clara would be there. The library, a grand, slightly lopsided Victorian edifice built in 1888, was more than just her workplace. It was her sanctuary, her passion, her life's quiet devotion. She loved the way the morning light, filtered through the tall arched windows, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden fairies. She loved the hushed reverence of the empty rooms, the scent of aged paper and leather that clung to the very air, a perfume of stories told and untold. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the old heating system was a familiar companion, a whisper of the building's long history. Clara, with her practical spectacles perched on her nose and her usually sensible brown hair already escaping its clip, moved through the stacks with an almost reverential grace. Her fingers, stained faintly with ink and dust, would trace the spines of beloved volumes. She knew every book, every patron, every secret nook and cranny of the library. She knew which shelf held the first edition of a forgotten poet, which armchair was the most comfortable for an afternoon nap, and where the resident library cat, a ginger tabby named Chaucer, liked to nap in a sunbeam. Her days were a comforting rhythm of organizing, cataloging, recommending, and simply existing amidst the quiet magic of books. She found joy in helping a child discover their first fairy tale, in finding a rare historical text for a local historian, or simply in the shared unspoken understanding with a regular patron who preferred the quiet company of a good book to the chatter of the world. Clara was, by nature, a quiet soul herself. She found her loudest expressions in the passion she held for stories and the gentle way she cared for the world around her. But lately, a different kind of whisper had begun to circulate through Oakhaven, a whisper that brought with it a tremor of unease. The library, beloved as it was showing its age. A leaking roof, a temperamental heating system, and electrical wiring that dated back to the turn of the century were no longer charming quirks, they were serious concerns. The town council, after much debate and a surprisingly generous grant from a historical preservation society, had voted for a full restoration. Clara's heart had sunk when she first heard the news. Restoration, to her, often sounded like a euphemism for modernization or stripping away the soul. She'd seen it happen to other historical buildings in nearby towns, the cold, sterile lines replacing the warm, lived-in character. She worried about the nooks, the settled dust, the very essence of what made the Oakhaven Library Oakhaven Library. Her apprehension had only deepened when she received an email from the town council, informing her of the lead architect assigned to the project. Lawrence. The name itself sounded sharp, precise, utterly devoid of the warmth and history she cherished. He was, according to the brief biography, a rising star in historical architecture, known for his innovative yet respectful approach to preserving heritage structures. Clara couldn't help but translate innovative into cold steel and glass. The day of his arrival dawned with a gray, overcast sky, mirroring Clara's mood. She had prepared a meticulous tour, highlighting every architectural detail she adored, every story embedded in the walls. She hoped to overwhelm him with the building's spirit, to make him understand that this was more than just bricks and mortar. This was a living, breathing testament to Oakhaven's past. The sound of a sleek, dark car pulling up to the curb outside was jarringly modern against the backdrop of horse-drawn carriages and Model T Fords that usually populated her daydreams. A tall figure emerged, uncoiling from the driver's seat with an elegant economy of motion. Elias Thorne was, Clara grudgingly admitted, undeniably striking. He moved with a confident, almost authoritative air. His tailored charcoal suit seemed to absorb the muted light. His dark hair was impeccably styled, and his sharp, intelligent eyes, a startling shade of blue, immediately swept over the library's facade with an intense scrutiny that made Clara feel, for a moment, like she herself was being evaluated. He carried a slim leather briefcase and a rolled set of blueprints, looking every inch the professional. He extended a hand, and his grip was firm, warm, and unexpectedly gentle. "Miss Finch, I presume? Elias Thorne. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." His voice was low, resonant, and carried a note of quiet authority that Clara found both intriguing and slightly unnerving. "Mr. Thorne," Clara managed, feeling a sudden flutter in her chest that she attributed solely to nerves. "Welcome to Oakhaven. Welcome to the library." She gestured vaguely towards the grand oak doors. He offered a small, polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, which were still assessing the building. "It's even more magnificent than the photograph suggested. A true gem." His gaze lingered on the intricate carvings above the entrance, a faint line appearing between his brows. Clara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he did appreciate it. "Indeed," she said, leading him inside. "It's always been the heart of our community." As they stepped into the main hall, the scent of old books seemed to deepen, wrapping around them. Elias paused, taking a slow, deliberate breath. "The air itself tells a story here," he murmured, his eyes sweeping from the soaring ceilings to the worn mosaic floor. He wasn't just looking at the structure, he was sensing it. This observation, so unexpected from the sharp, precise architect she had imagined, disarmed Clara slightly. "Yes," she agreed, "it does." She led him past the grand staircase, its banister smoothed by generations of hands, towards her office. "I've prepared a brief history of the building, and a list of all the structural issues we're currently aware of." He nodded, listening intently as she spoke. But his gaze kept drifting, taking in the overflowing bookshelves, the cozy reading nooks, the general atmosphere of cherished disarray. Clara felt a strange mix of pride and defensiveness. She wanted him to see the beauty, but also dreaded him seeing the flaws as opportunities for his innovative solutions. "So," he began, once they were settled in her rather cluttered office, its walls lined with bookish ephemera. "From what I understand, the primary concerns are the roof, the electrical system, and the heating. And of course, general wear and tear from over a century of continuous use." He opened his briefcase, pulling out a tablet and a stylus. "Exactly," Clara confirmed, trying to keep her voice steady. "But it's crucial that any changes respect the original character, the patina, the feel. It's all part of its charm." She felt herself tensing, bracing for the inevitable clash. Elias looked up from his tablet, his blue eyes meeting hers directly. "Miss Finch, I understand your concerns. My firm specializes in historical preservation. Our goal isn't to erase the past, but to ensure the building can stand for another century, while retaining its unique identity." His tone was calm, professional, yet there was an underlying firmness that left no room for doubt about his expertise. "But sometimes," Clara ventured, "preservation can be sterile. I've seen restored buildings that feel like museums, not living spaces." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "I assure you, Miss Finch, my intention is not to turn this library into a mausoleum of forgotten books. A building, especially one like this, is a living entity. It breathes, it ages, and it needs care to thrive. But care doesn't mean changing its essence." He paused, then gestured around her office. "Take this room, for example. The original wainscoting, the fireplace, even the slight slant of the floorboards. These are details that tell a story. My job is to ensure they can continue to do so, safely and efficiently, without turning them into a plastic replica." Clara found herself staring at him, surprised by the nuance in his words. She had expected a purely technical approach, not such a thoughtful, almost philosophical one. I appreciate that, Mr. Thorne." "Elias, please," he corrected gently. "And you can call me Clara." "Clara," she repeated, the name feeling unfamiliar on her tongue in his presence. "So where would you like to start?" "Everywhere," he replied, a hint of dry humor in his voice. "But perhaps we can begin with the roof, and then the basement. I'd like to understand the full scope of the building's current condition." They spent the rest of the morning traversing the library, Elias meticulously examining every detail, Clara following a step behind, offering anecdotes and historical tidbits. He listened more than he spoke, often jotting notes on his tablet or taking photographs with a professional camera he'd produced from his bag. Clara watched him, a slow shift occurring in her initial perception. He wasn't dismissive of her sentimental attachments. In fact, he seemed to absorb them, connecting them to the structural elements he was assessing. When he ran his hand over the worn oak of a reading table, or pointed out the delicate craftsmanship of a stained glass window, there was a genuine appreciation in his touch and gaze. "This is an unusual design choice for the era," he remarked, pointing to a small circular window tucked away on the landing of the second floor. It was often overlooked, a simple bullseye pane of glass that offered a distorted, almost dreamlike view of the town square. "It's said to be a wishing window," Clara explained, a rare personal detail escaping her lips. "Local legend says if you make a wish while looking through it at noon, it will come true." Elias turned to her, a genuine smile finally gracing his features, softening the sharp angles of his face. "A wishing window. I like that. Does it work?" Clara laughed softly. "I've made a few wishes over the years. Some have come true, some haven't. But it's the hope that counts, isn't it?" He nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "Always, hope is the blueprint of possibility." Their tour continued, moving from the grand main hall to the quiet children's section, then up to the dusty, rarely used archives on the third floor. It was there, amidst towering shelves of forgotten newspapers and ancient maps, that Elias paused before a particularly dilapidated section of wall. "This plaster work," he said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "It's not original, and it sounds hollow." He gently tapped the wall, and a dull thud echoed back. "I suspect there's something behind it, perhaps a blocked-off doorway or even a hidden room." Clara's eyes widened. A hidden room? In the library? She had explored every inch of this building, or so she thought. The idea of a secret space, hidden for decades, sent a thrill of excitement through her. "I've never heard any mention of one in the library's records." Elias ran his hand over the rough plaster, a thoughtful frown on his face. "It's not uncommon in buildings of this age. Sometimes they were servants' passages, or simply storage areas that were sealed off during a later renovation. We won't know until we investigate further, of course, but it's worth noting." He turned to her, his blue eyes sparkling with a hint of shared adventure. "What do you say, Miss Finch? Shall we uncover the library's secrets, one hidden whisper at a time?" Clara felt a warmth spread through her, chasing away the last vestiges of her apprehension. This wasn't just about repairs and budgets anymore. This was about discovery, about peeling back layers of time, and about a shared journey with a man who, she was beginning to realize, saw the world with a depth and curiosity that mirrored her own. "I say," she replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "Let's begin." He offered her a small, almost shy smile, and gestured towards the nearest towering bookshelf, its dark wood gleaming faintly in the afternoon light filtering through the tall windows. "Where shall we begin our archaeological dig into the past, Miss Finch? The history section, perhaps? Or a forgotten novel that holds a clue within its pages?" Clara found herself mirroring his smile, a lightness settling in her chest. "Let's start with the most neglected corner," she suggested, pointing to a section near the back wall, where shelves seemed to sag slightly under the weight of dust-laden tomes. "If there's a secret to be found, it's often tucked away where no one bothers to look." Thorne's eyes lit up with approval. "An excellent strategy. The forgotten often hold the most valuable truths." He moved with an easy grace, retrieving a small, sturdy stepladder from a nearby alcove. "Allow me." They began, not with grand revelations, but with the quiet, rhythmic work of clearing. Thorne carefully took down books, one by one, handing them to Clara, who, armed with a soft cloth, meticulously wiped away years of accumulated dust before placing them on a makeshift cart. The air filled with the gentle scent of old paper and leather, a comforting aroma that spoke of countless stories held within countless pages. As they worked, a comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the soft rustle of pages, the creak of the ladder, and the occasional murmured observation. "Look at this edition," Thorne would say, his voice a low rumble, holding out a volume with intricate gold tooling. "Published in 1888, a first edition, I believe." Clara would peer at it, her fingers tracing the delicate patterns. "Imagine the hands that held this," she'd muse, "the minds that absorbed its words." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from the history of printing to the lives of forgotten authors. From the architectural nuances of the library itself, to their shared love for the tactile experience of a physical book. Clara found herself relaxing completely in his presence, her earlier anxieties about the house, her responsibilities, and even her own slightly chaotic life fading into the background. Here, In this quiet sanctuary, with this thoughtful man, she felt a rare sense of peace. Hours melted into the late afternoon. The light outside softened, casting long golden shadows across the polished floorboards. They had cleared several shelves, revealing the rich dark wood beneath, and had amassed a small collection of particularly interesting books. A travelogue filled with handwritten annotations, a collection of botanical prints, and a slim volume of poetry with a faded ribbon bookmark. "Anything resembling a secret passage yet?" Clara asked, stretching her back, a small sigh escaping her lips. Her fingers were smudged with dust, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in weeks. Thorne chuckled, a warm, resonant sound. "Not yet a passage, Miss Finch, but perhaps a whisper." He pointed to a section of the shelf they had just emptied. There, etched into the wood, almost invisible beneath decades of grime, was a faint, swirling symbol. It looked like an intertwining of vines or perhaps two stylized letters. Clara leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What do you make of that?" Thorne gently brushed away a final film of dust with his thumb. "It's a monogram, I believe, or a family crest, perhaps. It's too intricate for simple initials." He ran his fingers lightly over the carving. "And it feels intentional, not a casual scratch." As he moved his hand, his thumb brushed against a raised knot in the wood, barely perceptible. He pressed it lightly, then again, with a little more force. With a soft click, a narrow panel, no wider than his hand, slid inwards, revealing a shallow recess behind the shelf. Clara gasped, her eyes wide with surprise and delight. "You found it! A hidden compartment!" Thorne looked as pleased as she did, a boyish grin spreading across his face. He reached inside and carefully withdrew a small leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth with age, and a single, yellowed envelope. He handed them to Clara, his touch light and deferential. "The first secret of Blackwood Manor," he murmured, his voice laced with quiet triumph. Clara's heart thrummed with excitement. She opened the journal first. The pages were filled with elegant, looping script, the ink faded to sepia. The first entry was dated 1892. "It's a diary," she whispered, her voice full of reverence. "Someone's personal thoughts." She looked up at Thorne, her eyes shining. "Whose do you think it is?" He shrugged, a thoughtful expression on his face. "The house records might tell us who resided here in 1892, but for now, perhaps the envelope holds a clue." Clara carefully opened the brittle envelope. Inside lay a single, pressed violet, its color faded to a delicate lavender, and a small, folded piece of paper. She unfolded it gently. It was a poem, handwritten in the same elegant script as the diary. "Etito, my dearest Athelred, beneath the silent gaze of stars above, my heart, a silent bloom unfolds its love. Ah." Each whispered word, a beacon in the night, "You, guiding my soul towards your gentle light. Ah. Though walls may rise and time may strive to part, your presence lives, enshrined within my heart. Well, born me, I forever bound, a love that will not cease. In every breath, I find my soul's true peace. Oh, I'll be yours always, E. Eh." Clara finished reading, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "Ian Athelred," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "A secret love story, hidden for over a century." Thorne leaned against the now empty bookshelf, his gaze fixed on the poem in her hand. "A testament to enduring affection. It gives this house a different kind of warmth, doesn't it? A history beyond brick and mortar." "It does," Clara agreed, her eyes lingering on the delicate violet. "It makes it feel lived in, loved, not just old." She carefully placed the poem and the flower back into the envelope, then tucked the envelope into the journal. "We should keep these safe. Maybe we can find out more about Ian Athelred." "I concur," Thorne said, pushing himself off the shelf. "But perhaps that's a task for tomorrow. The light is fading, and I suspect a formidable hunger is beginning to make itself known." He glanced at his watch. "It's nearly 7. I've been so engrossed I quite lost track of time." Clara laughed, a bright, melodic sound. "Me too. I haven't eaten since breakfast." She gathered the cleaning supplies onto the cart. "I suppose I should go and attempt to conjure something edible from the kitchen." "Allow me to make a suggestion, Miss Finch," Thorne interjected, his voice softening slightly. There's a charming little bistro in the village, quite renowned for its evening fare. Perhaps, after such a productive day of discovery, we might celebrate our first secret uncovered with something a little more substantial than a hastily prepared meal. He met her gaze, his blue eyes warm and inviting. My treat, of course, as a thank you for your enthusiasm and your keen eye for neglected corners. Clara hesitated for only a moment. The thought of another lonely meal in the vast, echoing kitchen, followed by another evening of paperwork, suddenly felt immensely unappealing. The idea of a warm, bustling bistro and the continuation of this fascinating conversation with Thorne was far more enticing. I'd like that very much, Mr. Thorne, she replied, a genuine blush rising to her cheeks. But on the condition that I insist on paying for dessert, it's only fair. He smiled, a deep crinkle forming at the corners of his eyes. A delightful compromise, Miss Finch. Give me a moment to wash up, and I'll be ready to depart. As Thorne disappeared around a corner, Clara found herself smiling at the worn journal in her hands. The day had started with the daunting task of assessing repairs and managing budgets. It was ending with a secret love story, a shared discovery, and an unexpected dinner invitation. Blackwood Manor, she realized, was far more than just a crumbling estate. It was a repository of forgotten lives, and perhaps a catalyst for new ones. The bistro, named the Gilded Spoon, was indeed charming. Warm lamplight spilled from its windows, illuminating a cobbled street, and inside, the air was fragrant with herbs and roasted meats. Clara and Thorne were seated at a small, intimate table by the window, and the gentle hum of conversation and the clinking of cutlery provided a pleasant backdrop. Over plates of perfectly seared duck and crisp vegetables, their conversation flowed as easily as it had in the library. Thorne spoke of his work as an architectural historian, his passion for preserving the stories embedded in old buildings. Clara, in turn, found herself opening up about her own journey. Her background in historical conservation, her love for uncovering the layers of the past, and even the slightly overwhelming responsibility she felt for Blackwood Manor. It's more than just a job, isn't it? Thorne observed, his gaze thoughtful. It's a calling. You see the soul in these old structures. I do, Clara admitted, feeling a surprising sense of relief at his understanding. They're not just bricks and mortar. They're echoes of lives lived, dreams dreamed, secrets kept. She paused, a small smile playing on her lips. Like Ian Ethelred. Thorne leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. Indeed. I've often found that the most profound histories aren't found in grand archives, but in the intimate corners of a home. A pressed flower, a faded letter, a hidden compartment, they speak volumes. He took a sip of his wine. You have a remarkable sensitivity for it, Miss Finch. And you, Mr. Thorne, have an equally remarkable knack for finding the hidden nooks, Clara countered, feeling a warmth spread through her. I think we make a rather good team. He met her gaze, and for a fleeting moment, the air between them seemed to shimmer with an unspoken understanding. I believe we do, Miss Finch. A very good team indeed. By the time their dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate lava cake for Clara and a delicate lemon tart for Thorne, the initial awkwardness of a first semi-date had completely vanished. Clara felt a profound comfort in his presence, a sense of ease she hadn't anticipated. Thorne was not only intelligent and insightful, but also possessed a gentle humor and a quiet attentiveness that made her feel truly seen. Tell me, Clara began, spooning a bit of melting chocolate onto her plate, what first drew you to architectural history? Was there a specific building, a particular story? Thorne paused, stirring his tea. It was an old lighthouse, actually, on the coast of Cornwall. My grandfather was a lighthouse keeper, and I spent many summers there as a boy. The stories he told me of the light, the sea, the ships, but also of the men who built it, the families who lived within its walls, the way it stood against the gales for centuries. It taught me that every structure has a narrative, a purpose beyond its function. He smiled faintly. I suppose you could say I've been chasing those narratives ever since. Clara listened, captivated. His story was told with a quiet passion that resonated deeply with her own feelings for Blackwood Manor. That's beautiful, she said softly. A lighthouse, guiding ships. And now you guide the stories of old buildings. He looked at her, his blue eyes holding a depth she hadn't initially perceived. And you, Miss Finch, are doing the same for Blackwood Manor, giving it new life, new purpose, while honoring its past. After dessert, Thorne insisted on walking Clara back to Blackwood Manor. The night air was cool and crisp, and the sky was a velvet canvas sprinkled with a million stars. The silence between them on the walk was companionable, filled with the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. As they reached the imposing gates of the estate, Thorne stopped, turning to face her. "Thank you for a truly delightful evening, Miss Finch." "The pleasure was all mine, Mr. Thorne," Clara replied, her voice a little softer than usual. She found herself wishing the walk had been longer, wishing the evening wasn't quite over. "And for the discovery today," he added, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "I dare say E and Ethelred have sparked a new dimension to our project." "Indeed," Clara agreed, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm quite eager to delve into that diary tomorrow." She looked up at the vast, dark silhouette of the manor. "There's so much more to uncover, isn't there?" "So much more," Thorne echoed, his gaze lingering on her face. "Until tomorrow then, Miss Finch." "Good night, Mr. Thorne." He nodded, a gentle smile on his face, then turned and walked down the drive, disappearing into the shadows. Clara watched him go, a strange flutter in her chest. She stood there for a moment longer, breathing in the cool night air, before turning towards the manor. The house no longer felt quite so daunting, quite so empty. It felt pregnant with possibility. The next morning, Clara was in the library, bright and early, the journal of E and the poem carefully placed on a large, sturdy table. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, but also lending a hopeful glow to the room. She was so engrossed in rereading the first few entries of the diary that she didn't hear Thorne enter until he cleared his throat gently. "Good morning, Miss Finch. Eager to continue our historical reconnaissance?" Clara looked up, a bright smile on her face. "Mr. Thorne, good morning. I couldn't help myself. I started reading. It's truly fascinating." She gestured to the journal. E's name was Eleanor Blackwood. She was the daughter of the previous owner, a stern traditional man who owned a sprawling tea plantation in Ceylon. Thorne pulled up a chair and sat opposite her, his gaze intent. "And Ethelred?" "That's the mystery," Clara said, tapping the page. "She never writes his full name, only Ethelred or my dearest A. But from what I can gather, he was a tutor employed by her father for a younger sibling, or perhaps a visiting scholar. Their relationship was clandestine, forbidden even." "Ah, the classic tale," Thorne murmured, a sympathetic curve to his lips. "Love blooming in defiance of societal expectations." "Precisely," Clara agreed, her eyes sparkling. "Her entries are full of longing, of secret meetings in the gardens, of whispered conversations in the library itself. She talks about the books, about the way they offer solace and escape, and she mentions a particular passage, a secret passage to a quiet room where they would meet." Thorne's eyes widened. "A secret passage? Now that is a discovery worthy of our attention." He leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "This library is quite large. Do you recall any areas that seemed out of place? Perhaps a wall that was thicker than it should be? Or a bookshelf that didn't quite fit the symmetry?" Clara closed her eyes, picturing the library's layout. "Well, there's that section near the old fireplace on the far wall. It's mostly filled with very heavy, obscure legal texts. It always felt a bit crammed, as if it were trying to hide something." "Excellent intuition, Miss Finch," Thorne said, rising from his chair. "Let's investigate." They spent the next few hours meticulously examining the area around the fireplace. They moved books, tapped on walls, and ran their hands along every panel and crevice. The work was slow and methodical, but the shared purpose, the thrill of the chase, made it feel like an exhilarating adventure. "Listen to this," Thorne said eventually, his knuckles rapping gently on a section of paneling behind a particularly dense collection of law books. "It sounds hollow." Clara pressed her ear against the wood. Indeed, there was a subtle echo, different from the solid thud of the surrounding wall. "You're right, but how do we open it?" They searched for levers, buttons, or hidden catches, their fingers exploring every inch of the intricately carved wood. Just as frustration began to set in, Clara noticed a small, almost invisible knot in the wood carving, shaped like a tiny rosebud, nestled amongst a cluster of leaves. It was barely distinguishable from the surrounding ornamentation. "Here!" she exclaimed, her voice hushed with excitement. She pressed the rosebud firmly. With a soft groan and a gentle click, a section of the paneling, cleverly disguised as part of the bookshelf, swung inwards, revealing a narrow, dust-filled passage. The air that wafted out was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of old wood and forgotten memories. Thorn retrieved a sturdy flashlight from his toolkit. "After you, Miss Finch," he said, holding the light steady, a glint of anticipation in his eyes. Clara, feeling a thrill course through her veins, stepped into the passage. It was dark, narrow, and smelled faintly of damp earth and thyme. The beam of Thorn's flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing rough-hewn stone walls and a low, arched ceiling. The passage twisted slightly, then opened into a small, circular room. The room was Spartan but clearly cherished. There was a narrow built-in bench, covered with a faded velvet cushion, and a small, round table. On the table, nestled beneath a film of dust, lay a delicate silver locket, tarnished with age, and a single dried rose, its petals brittle and brown. Clara picked up the locket, her fingers trembling slightly. It was exquisitely crafted, and when she managed to pry it open, two tiny faded daguerreotypes were revealed. A young woman with serious, intelligent eyes, and a handsome young man with a determined jawline and a kind smile. "Eleanor and Athelred," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The faces in the locket were so vivid, so real, despite the passage of time. Thorn stood beside her, his presence a quiet comfort in the small, intimate space. He pointed to a small inscription carved into the wooden table. "Look here." Clara leaned closer. Carved into the wood, in a hand that matched Eleanor's elegant script, were the words, "Amor vincit omnia." Love conquers all. Tears pricked at Clara's eyes. To find such a tangible echo of their secret love a century later felt incredibly poignant. They loved each other so much, she murmured, and they had this secret space, this haven. "It's a beautiful story, Miss Finch," Thorn said softly, his voice full of reverence. "A testament to the enduring power of affection, even in the face of adversity." He paused, his gaze sweeping around the small room. This passage, it adds an entirely new layer to Blackwood Manor. It's not just a house. It's a repository of deep human emotion. Clara carefully closed the locket and placed it back on the table, next to the dried rose. "We should ensure this room is preserved, exactly as it is. It's a piece of history." "I agree completely," Thorn said, his eyes meeting hers. "A silent witness to a love that defied its era, and a reminder that even within the most rigid structures, there can be hidden spaces for the heart to bloom." They spent a little longer in the secret room, absorbing its quiet atmosphere, imagining Eleanor and Athelred meeting there, sharing whispered dreams and stolen moments. When they finally emerged back into the main library, the afternoon light seemed brighter, the air fresher, as if the discovery had lifted a veil. "What now, Mr. Thorn?" Clara asked, feeling a lightness in her step she hadn't known she possessed. "The library still needs its structural repairs, of course, but now it feels different." "Now," Thorn replied, a thoughtful glint in his eyes, "we continue to peel back the layers. Eleanor's diary likely holds more clues, more stories. And I have a feeling this house, Miss Finch, has many more secrets yet to reveal." He paused, his gaze lingering on her face. "And perhaps, in the process, we might discover a few more things about ourselves, too." Clara felt a blush creep up her neck, but she didn't look away. The past 2 days had been a whirlwind of unexpected discoveries, both within the dusty walls of Blackwood Manor and within herself. She had started this project feeling overwhelmed and alone, but now, with Thorn by her side, the prospect of uncovering more secrets, of breathing new life into this old house, filled her with an exhilarating sense of purpose and a quiet, burgeoning hope. "I think," she said, her voice soft but firm, "that would be a most welcome discovery indeed." Thorn smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that reached his eyes. "Then let us embark on the next chapter of our investigation, Miss Finch. The story of Blackwood Manor, and perhaps of us, is only just beginning." Thorn's words hung in the air, a soft promise that resonated deep within Eliza. The flickering lamplight cast long shadows, making the newly revealed opening seem like a portal to another time. Eliza felt a shiver, not of fear, but of anticipation. She took a steadying breath, her gaze meeting Thorn's. His eyes, warm and earnest, held a shared excitement that mirrored her own. "Lead the way, Mr. Thorne," she said, a playful lilt in her voice she hadn't known she possessed. He offered a slight bow, a twinkle in his eye, and then, with a careful hand, he pushed aside the last vestiges of the concealed panel. A gust of stale, earthy air, heavy with the scent of aged wood and forgotten things, wafted out. It was dark inside, a darkness that felt ancient and undisturbed. Thorne retrieved a more powerful lantern from his bag, its beam cutting through the gloom. "It appears to be a small chamber, rather than a full passage," he observed, shining the light into the dusty expanse. "Perhaps a hidden study, or a repository of keepsakes." Eliza peered over his shoulder. The chamber was indeed small, barely large enough for two people to stand comfortably, and surprisingly uncluttered. Dust lay thick on every surface, a fine velvety blanket, but there was an order to it. Against one wall, a sturdy, dark oak chest sat, its surface carved with intricate, faded patterns. Beside it, a tall, narrow bookshelf, its shelves laden with leather-bound volumes, stood sentinel. A small, rickety writing desk occupied a corner, a single, ink-stained quill pen still resting in its holder, as if the occupant had simply stepped away for a moment. "Remarkable," Eliza whispered, her hand instinctively reaching out to touch the threshold, her fingers brushing against the cool, smooth wood. "It's as if time stood still in here." Thorne stepped in first, his boots disturbing centuries of dust with a soft shush. He held the lantern high, illuminating the details. "Careful, Miss Finch. Everything will be fragile." Eliza followed, moving with a reverence she usually reserved for the most delicate of archaeological finds. The air inside was cool, still, and held a peculiar quiet, as if the chamber itself was holding its breath. She walked towards the bookshelf, her fingers hovering over the spines of the books. They were old, very old, many of them hand-bound, their titles faded into illegibility. "Look at this," Thorne said, his voice soft, drawing her attention to the desk. On its surface, beneath a thin film of dust, lay a stack of papers, yellowed and brittle. And beside them, a small polished wooden box, its lid intricately inlaid with mother-of-pearl. It looked like a music box, or perhaps a jewelry casket. "A treasure trove," Eliza murmured, her heart quickening. She felt a profound connection to the unknown hands that had placed these items here, the lives they represented. But where to begin? Thorne smiled, a slow, thoughtful expression. Perhaps with the most tantalizing enigma first. He gestured towards the wooden box. "It seems to call out for attention." With utmost care, Thorne lifted the box. It was surprisingly heavy. He tried the clasp, but it was locked. "No key, it seems," he noted, turning it over in his hands. "We'll need to be gentle with this." Eliza, meanwhile, had gravitated towards the stack of papers. She gently blew away some of the dust, revealing elegant, looping script. "These appear to be letters," she said, her voice filled with a quiet awe. "And this," she pointed to the top sheet, "is dated 1785, almost 200 years old." They spent the next hour simply cataloging their initial findings, careful not to disturb anything more than necessary. The oak chest was locked as well, and seemed far too heavy to move easily. The books, though numerous, looked like they would require careful handling to avoid disintegrating. It was clear this chamber held a story, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of lives long past. "We should bring these out into the light," Thorne suggested, gesturing towards the letters. "And perhaps we can find a way to open this box later." He carefully placed the wooden box back on the desk. Eliza nodded, her mind already buzzing with theories. The library, perhaps, more space to spread everything out. Back in the grand, if still somewhat chilly, library, they laid out the stack of letters on the large mahogany table, beneath the gentle glow of a newly installed electric lamp. The atmosphere was different now, less about practical restoration, and more about historical excavation. "These are truly exquisite," Eliza said, her fingers carefully unfolding the first letter. The paper was fine, almost translucent, and the ink, though faded, was still remarkably clear. "The penmanship is beautiful." The letters were addressed to a dearest Eleanor, and signed your devoted Juliet. They painted a vivid picture of a forbidden romance, a clandestine affection between two souls separated by social standing and circumstance. Julian, it seemed, was a young, ambitious architect, commissioned to work on Blackwood Manor, while Eleanor was the daughter of the manor's then owner. Eliza found herself completely engrossed, her practical mind momentarily forgotten in the rush of human emotion. Thorne sat opposite her, his elbows on the table, equally absorbed. He read silently over her shoulder sometimes, or waited patiently as she deciphered a particularly faded word. Their heads were often close, their shared breaths mingling in the quiet room. He speaks of her beauty, her intellect, her spirit. Eliza read aloud, her voice softening. And the impossibility of their union. My heart aches for a future I dare not dream of, my dearest, for the world conspires against such a humble man as I, and a lady of your esteemed position. A classic tale, Thorne mused, his gaze fixed on the delicate script. Love against the odds. But why hide these letters? Eliza wondered, looking up at him. And for so long, did their love never come to fruition? As they continued to read through the stack, a narrative began to emerge. Julian and Eleanor met secretly in the gardens, exchanged notes hidden in books, and dreamed of a life together. But Eleanor's father had already arranged her marriage to a wealthy, older gentleman. The letters grew more desperate, more poignant, filled with the pain of impending separation. One letter, dated just a few days before Eleanor's scheduled wedding, spoke of a final meeting, a desperate plan. Meet me by the old weeping willow at midnight, Julian wrote. I have found a way, my love, a chance, however slim, for us to escape this gilded cage. If you are truly mine, you will come. Oh no, Eliza breathed, her heart aching for the young lovers. Did she go? The letters abruptly ended after that. The last one was Julian's desperate plea. There were no more from him, nor any from Eleanor. The silence of the subsequent pages was deafening. Thorne picked up the last letter, his thumb tracing the faded signature. Perhaps the wooden box holds the answer. It feels like something a lover would keep close. The thought spurred them to action. They returned to the hidden chamber, Thorne carefully carrying the now empty lantern. The wooden box still sat on the desk, a silent sentinel to a bygone era. We need to find a way to open it without damaging it, Eliza said, her practical side reasserting itself. She examined the intricate inlay, looking for a hidden mechanism, a trick lock. Thorne, ever resourceful, produced a small set of delicate tools from his ever-present bag. A watchmaker's set, perfect for delicate work, he explained, selecting a thin, almost needle-like probe. He worked with a meticulous precision, his brow furrowed in concentration. Eliza watched, mesmerized by the dexterity of his fingers, the way the lamplight highlighted the strong line of his jaw. Finally, with a soft click, the lid sprang open. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay not jewels, but a single, exquisitely carved wooden bird, a tiny nightingale, its wings poised for flight. Beside it, a small folded piece of paper and a delicate silver locket, tarnished with age. Eliza gasped softly. The nightingale, she whispered, remembering a line from one of Julian's letters where he likened Eleanor's voice to a nightingale's song. Thorne carefully lifted the locket. It was heart-shaped, and when he gently pried it open, 2 miniature portraits were revealed. A handsome young man with earnest eyes, Julian, undoubtedly, and a beautiful woman with soft, intelligent features, Eleanor. Then, Eliza carefully unfolded the paper. It was a single, short note, written in Eleanor's hand, the script less formal, more hurried than the letters from Julian. My dearest Julian, why? He could not. My father, he threatened to ruin you, to see you imprisoned if I dared to defy him. My heart breaks to write this, but I must stay. I cannot bear to see your dreams shattered, your life destroyed for my sake. My love for you will live on, a secret song in my heart, long after I am wed. Forgive me. Live, my love. Live and thrive, and know that you were, and always will be, my true beloved. In der Wand. Yours, forever, Eleanor. A profound sadness settled over them. The tragic beauty of it, the sacrifice, the enduring love that could never be. Eliza felt a prickle behind her eyes. It was a story as old as time, yet here, in this dusty chamber, it felt fresh and raw. She chose his safety over her own happiness, Eliza murmured, her voice thick with emotion. What an impossible choice. Thorne placed a gentle hand on her arm, a comforting gesture that sent a ripple of warmth through her. A sacrifice born of deep love, he agreed, his voice tender. And these letters, this box, they were her way of keeping his memory alive, of preserving their story. They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of the revelation. The flickering lamplight cast their shadows long on the walls, making them seem like figures from another era, privy to a sacred secret. This house, Eliza finally said, her voice soft, it holds so much more than just old furniture and peeling wallpaper. It holds hearts. Indeed, Thorn replied, his fingers still resting lightly on her arm. And now, we hold a part of those hearts. He squeezed her arm gently before withdrawing his hand, the subtle contact lingering. Perhaps Eleanor kept this chamber as her private sanctuary, a place where she could remember Julian without fear of discovery. They carefully put the locket and the note back into the box, closing it with a renewed sense of reverence. The mystery of Julian and Eleanor was not a grand treasure hunt, but a deeply personal, poignant discovery. It felt like they had stumbled upon a forgotten corner of history, a quiet testament to love and sacrifice. As they emerged from the hidden chamber, sealing the panel behind them once more, the manor seemed to breathe a little lighter. The cold, austere air of the library felt less formidable, more welcoming. They made a pot of tea, the gentle clinking of cups a soothing counterpoint to the quiet unfolding of history. It makes you wonder, Eliza said, cradling her warm mug. What other stories are hidden within these walls? What other lives breathed, loved, and grieved here? Thorn leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. Every old house is a book, Miss Finch, waiting for someone to turn its pages. And Blackwood Manor, I suspect, is an epic. His gaze met hers across the table, and a comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken understanding. The discovery of Julian and Eleanor's story had stirred something profound within Eliza. She realized that her initial drive to simply restore Blackwood Manor had evolved. It wasn't just about preserving brick and mortar, it was about honoring the lives that had shaped it, giving voice to the whispers of the past. And in Thorn she found a kindred spirit, someone who understood the subtle magic of history and the enduring power of human connection. Over the next few days their routine settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings were spent in the library, poring over the letters, cross-referencing names and dates with old parish records Thorn had access to, slowly piecing together the broader context of Julian and Eleanor's lives. They discovered Eleanor did indeed marry the older gentleman, a Baron Ashworth, and lived a life of quiet dignity at Blackwood Manor. But she never had children. Julian, it seemed, had left the area shortly after, his fate remaining a poignant mystery for now. Afternoons were dedicated to the practical restoration work. Eliza, energized by their historical discoveries, tackled the peeling wallpaper in the drawing room with renewed vigor, Thorn often by her side, offering a steadying hand or a dry wit. He proved to be surprisingly adept at a variety of tasks, from repairing a loose banister to meticulously cleaning the tarnished silver heirlooms. He seemed to possess an innate understanding of old homes, an almost intuitive sense of their needs. One blustery afternoon, as Eliza was struggling to unstick a stubborn sash window in the study, Thorn appeared with 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate. A small fortification against the chill, he offered, his eyes twinkling. You are a lifesaver, Mr. Thorn, Eliza said, accepting the mug gratefully. Her fingers, stiff from the cold, wrapped around the warmth. I swear this window has been painted shut for decades. Thorn set his mug down and examined the window. A little gentle persuasion, perhaps. He produced a small flat tool from his pocket, a painter's multi-tool, and carefully began to work it around the edges of the frame. He moved with a quiet efficiency, his broad shoulders filling the small space beside her. The subtle scent of his aftershave, a faint hint of sandalwood and spice, mingled with the familiar smell of old wood and dust, creating a surprisingly comforting aroma. As he worked, their shoulders occasionally brushed, small, innocent contacts that nonetheless sent a pleasant warmth through Eliza. She found herself increasingly aware of his presence, the quiet strength in his hands, the focused intensity in his gaze. There, he said, with a final soft crack. The window slid open a fraction, letting in a gust of crisp, fresh air. Eliza beamed. You're a magician. Thank you. Thorn smiled, that genuine, heartwarming smile that reached his eyes. Just a bit of patience. This old house, she just needs a little care and understanding. He looked out the newly opened window at the sprawling, wild gardens, a thoughtful expression on his face. Much like most things worth preserving. His gaze then shifted to Eliza, lingering for a moment, and in that shared glance, Eliza felt a connection deepen, a silent understanding passing between them that transcended mere words. It was more than professional collaboration. It was a burgeoning friendship, laced with a delicate thread of something more profound. That evening, after a simple but delicious supper prepared by Eliza, Thorne insisted on helping with the washing up, making the task surprisingly enjoyable. They found themselves back in the library. Eliza was sketching out plans for the garden restoration, inspired by the fresh air, while Thorne was researching local historical societies, hoping to find more information about Julian. "I found a mention of a Julian Finch, an architect, who left the region rather abruptly in the late 1700s, Thorne announced, looking up from an old gazetteer. "He eventually made a name for himself in London, specializing in grand estates. It seems he did thrive, as Eleanor wished." Eliza paused, her pencil hovering over the paper. "Finch?" she repeated, a strange jolt going through her. "That's my surname, Thorne. Eliza Finch." Thorne's eyes widened slightly. "Good heavens, what a remarkable coincidence, do you suppose?" "It's certainly possible," Eliza mused, a new avenue of inquiry opening up before her. She had always known her family had a long, if somewhat obscure, history in England, but she had never delved deeply into it. Her own connection to Blackwood Manor, beyond its acquisition, had always felt purely coincidental. Now, a faint thread, stretching back centuries, seemed to be emerging. Julian Finch, my ancestor, perhaps? The idea was both thrilling and a little unsettling. To be connected to such a poignant, romantic tragedy, to the very fabric of Blackwood Manor, added a whole new layer of meaning to her work here. It felt less like a project, and more like a homecoming, a destiny unfolding. "We must investigate this further," Thorne said, his voice filled with renewed excitement. "Imagine, Miss Finch, if your own lineage is intertwined with the secrets of this house. It would be quite an extraordinary legacy." The thought settled warmly in Eliza's heart. She looked at Thorne, his face alight with enthusiasm, and a profound sense of gratitude washed over her. He wasn't just helping her restore a house. He was helping her uncover a past and perhaps forge a future. "I think," Eliza said, her voice soft but firm, looking around the library, now filled with the comforting glow of lamps and the quiet hum of their shared industry, "that Blackwood Manor is far from finished revealing its wonders. And I, for one, am eager for the next chapter." Thorne smiled, a deep, understanding smile that reached his eyes, and Eliza felt a quiet, burgeoning hope bloom within her. The story of Blackwood Manor was indeed only just beginning, and with Thorne by her side, the prospect of uncovering more secrets, of breathing new life into this old house, and exploring the delicate, unfolding narrative between them, filled her with an exhilarating sense of purpose and a quiet, burgeoning hope. They spent the rest of the evening poring over old blueprints Eliza had found tucked away in a dusty cabinet in the library. Thorne, with his practical mind and surprising knowledge of architectural history, pointed out structural quirks and potential hidden spaces, while Eliza, with her artist's eye, sketched out ideas for garden pathways and sun-drenched reading nooks. The air hummed with their shared energy, a delightful blend of practical planning and fanciful dreaming. Their first major undertaking was the Grand Hall. It was a cavernous space, dimmed by years of neglect, but Eliza saw its potential. Thorne, rather than hiring a full crew immediately, suggested they tackle the initial cleaning and assessment themselves. "It's a chance to truly get to know the bones of this place," he'd said, handing her a pair of sturdy work gloves. And so they began. Days bled into weeks, filled with the satisfying rhythm of labor. They swept away decades of dust, scrubbed grime from intricate carvings, and polished the dark wood paneling until it gleamed with a rich, forgotten luster. Laughter echoed through the empty halls as they wrestled with stubborn shutters, or discovered a forgotten, beautifully carved wooden box behind a loose panel, filled with antique gardening tools. During these hours, their conversations flowed as freely as the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. Eliza learned about Thorne's quiet passion for history, his family's long-standing connection to the region, and a subtle wistfulness in his voice when he spoke of his late grandparents' sprawling, beloved home that had been sold after their passing. He, in turn, discovered Eliza's deep love for stories, her innate ability to see beauty in decay, and the quiet resilience that brought her to Blackwood Manor. They shared simple lunches on drop cloths, their knees almost touching, discussing everything from the proper way to restore antique brass to their favorite childhood books. Each shared task, each small discovery, wove another thread into the delicate tapestry forming between them. One afternoon, while Thorn was examining an ornate fireplace in the grand hall, he noticed a faint, almost imperceptible seam in the stone above the mantelpiece. "Eliza, come look at this," he called, his voice laced with excitement. Together, they investigated, tracing the outline until Thorn, with a gentle push, revealed a cleverly disguised lever. With a soft click and a groan of ancient mechanisms, a section of the wall slid inward, revealing a small, dark recess. Inside, nestled amongst cobwebs, was a locked wooden chest and a stack of leather-bound journals. Their hearts thrummed with anticipation. Thorn, ever practical, produced antique skeleton keys from the study. The third key fit. Inside the chest, beneath faded silk, were letters, a delicate locket, and a portrait miniature of a young woman with a familiar intensity in her eyes. An ancestor of Thorn's, perhaps? The journals, however, were the real treasure. Written by Eleanor, a distant Blackwood relative from the late 19th century, they detailed her life, her love for a man considered unsuitable, and her secret efforts to preserve the manor's unique beauty against her father's utilitarian plans. She had hidden the chest, hoping her story would one day be found. They spent evenings curled on the worn sofa in the library, taking turns reading Eleanor's elegant script aloud. Her words painted a vivid picture of love, defiance, and deep connection to Blackwood Manor, mirroring the very feelings Eliza was beginning to harbor for the house and Thorn. As they read, their shoulders brushed, their hands occasionally intertwined, and the unspoken emotions between them grew palpable. Thorn, usually reserved, opened up about his own family history, the expectations placed upon him, and the quiet loneliness he'd carried since his grandparents' passing. Eliza, in turn, shared her artistic dreams, her past struggles with self-doubt, and the profound sense of belonging she felt for the first time at Blackwood. One night, as the last words of Eleanor's final entry faded into the quiet hum of the house, a poignant declaration of enduring love and hope for the future, Eliza looked up, her eyes meeting Thorn's across the flickering lamplight. The air was thick with shared history, shared vulnerability, and an undeniable current of attraction. Thorn reached out, his callous thumb gently tracing the line of her jaw. "Eliza," he whispered, his voice husky, "you've brought more than just light back into this house. You've brought hope back into my life." He leaned in slowly, giving her space, but Eliza met him halfway, her heart soaring. Their lips met, soft at first, then deepening into a kiss that was both tender and profound, a silent promise exchanged in the heart of Blackwood Manor. It tasted of dust and old books, shared laughter and unspoken longing, and for Eliza, it felt like coming home. The kiss was a turning point. Their relationship, once a delicate dance of unspoken feelings, now blossomed openly. They continued their work on the manor, but now with an added layer of shared joy and intimacy. Thorn's quiet strength became Eliza's anchor, and her vibrant creativity ignited a new spark in him. They dedicated a bright room to Eleanor's memory, transforming it into a beautiful writing retreat and small museum for her journals and artifacts, a testament to enduring love and finding one's voice. As the grand hall neared completion, Eliza's vision for the entire manor began to solidify. She wanted to preserve its historical integrity while infusing it with contemporary comfort and an artistic spirit. Thorn, impressed by her dedication and keen eye, fully supported her. He introduced her to architects and craftsmen who understood her vision, acting not just as a financial partner, but as a true collaborator, a sounding board for her ideas. They planned an art studio in the old conservatory, a community garden in the neglected walled garden, and even a small, intimate event space for local artists and musicians. Blackwood Manor wasn't just being restored. It was being reimagined as a vibrant cultural hub, a place where stories would continue to unfold. There was a moment, a quiet afternoon, when Eliza felt a flicker of doubt. Could she truly bring this grand vision to life? Could she, a lone artist, manage such a monumental undertaking? Thorn found her in the conservatory, staring out at the overgrown garden with a worried frown. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "What troubles you, my love?" he asked softly. Eliza confessed her fears. Thorn listened patiently, then squeezed her hand. "Eliza, you have an extraordinary gift for seeing what others cannot. You don't have to do it alone. We are a team. And Blackwood Manor needs your heart, just as I do." His unwavering faith was the steadying force she needed, reminding her that together they were capable. Months passed, marked by the changing seasons and the steady transformation of Blackwood Manor. The grand hall was complete, its polished floors reflecting light from newly cleaned windows. The gardens, once wild, now bloomed with vibrant color and carefully planned pathways. Eleanor's room was a peaceful sanctuary, filled with the quiet resonance of her story. The manor began to shed its melancholic shroud, emanating warmth and welcome. It was no longer a monument to the past, but a living, breathing testament to the future, to shared dreams. To celebrate the first major phase of restoration, Thorne and Eliza hosted a small gathering for the craftsmen, the local historical society, and a few close friends they had made in the community. The manor, softly lit by lamplight and candles, buzzed with laughter and conversation. Eliza, in a beautiful dress, shimmering like moonlight, moved through the rooms she had poured her heart into, a radiant smile on her face. Thorne stood by her side, his hand resting protectively on her back, his eyes full of pride and a profound love that mirrored her own. Later that evening, as the last guests departed and the quiet returned to the manor, Thorne led Eliza to the newly restored library, a place that held so many of their first shared moments. A gentle fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. He took both her hands, his gaze deep and earnest. "Eliza," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "when I first came to Blackwood, I saw a grand old house in need of repair. I never imagined I would find so much more. You've not only brought this house back to life, but you've awakened something in me I thought was long lost." He paused, then reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a delicate antique ring, a subtle emerald nestled amidst intricate silverwork, a family heirloom, he later explained. "Eliza Blackwood," he said, his voice a steady, loving plea. "Will you be my wife, and together, let us write all the remaining chapters of our lives right here in our home?" Tears welled in Eliza's eyes, happy tears that spilled freely down her cheeks. She didn't hesitate. "Yes, Thorne, 1,000 times yes." She threw her arms around him, holding him tight, feeling the solid beat of his heart against hers. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, a tangible symbol of their shared future. They spent the rest of the night planning, dreaming, talking about their wedding in the manor's garden, about filling the halls with children's laughter, about continuing Blackwood Manor's legacy, not just as a landmark, but as a home, a sanctuary, a place where love blossomed and stories never ended. As dawn painted the sky in soft hues of rose and gold, Eliza stood at the grand arched window of the master bedroom, Thorne's arm around her, looking out over the awakening estate. Blackwood Manor, bathed in the gentle morning light, seemed to hum with a quiet joy, its ancient stones holding not just the whispers of the past, but the vibrant promise of their future. The journey had begun with a mystery, a dilapidated house, and a burgeoning hope. Now, it was a home, filled with love, purpose, and the shared dreams of two hearts intertwined, ready to embrace every beautiful unfolding chapter that lay ahead together. The story of Blackwood Manor was indeed only just beginning, and with Thorne by her side, and a future brighter than the morning sun stretching before them, Eliza knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, this was where she was meant to be, forever.